This is CTV News with Angela John.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We begin with breaking news. The Vancouver Canucks are making some major changes to the front office and coaching staff. The team also announcing who will be taking over those positions. Canuck fans have been unhappy with management for some time now. Canucks have just confirmed general manager Jim Benning, assistant GM John Weisbrod, head coach Travis Green, and assistant coach Nolan Baumgartner have been relieved of their duties. The move comes after the Canucks lost for the 10th time in 13 games, falling 4-1 to the visiting Pittsburgh Penguins last night. Green has been head coach since April 2017. Benning is leaving after 7 seasons. The Canucks have missed the playoffs 5 times in the past 6 seasons. Former Canucks legend Stan Smyl has been named interim general manager, and Ryan Johnson has been named interim assistant GM. Bruce Boudreau will take on the role of the next head coach. Over 14 seasons as head coach, Boudreau has never had a losing season. Scott Walker, another former Canuck, has been announced as assistant coach. Francesco Aquilini says these are difficult decisions, but has been disappointed by the team's performance so far, adding in part, "I want to sincerely thank Jim, John, Travis, and Nolan for their passion and dedication to the organization and our community. We wish them nothing but success in the future." Now, we first told you about a shooting in Coquitlam last night, and now some shocking details have emerged. Police say a boy was in the back seat of this targeted vehicle. It happened on Chickadee Place in Coquitlam's Westwood Plateau neighborhood just before 5 p.m. At least a dozen bullet casings are visible, and this white Toyota is punctured with bullet holes. A man was taken to hospital with minor injuries and has since been released. Coquitlam RCMP say luckily his 9-year-old son escaped unharmed. Mounties say it's too early to tell if this is related to the ongoing gang conflict, but do not believe this shooting was random. A silver sedan was seen leaving the area. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. Human remains were found inside a burning vehicle in Abbotsford early this morning. Just before 3 a.m., firefighters were called to the 5000 block of Riverside Street to extinguish a vehicle fire. Once the flames were put out, human remains were found. The death is deemed suspicious. Abbotsford's major crime detectives and forensic identification units are investigating. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. And over on the island, 3 people were taken to hospital after a small plane crash at the Duncan Airport this morning. Ambulances were called to the airport just before 11. It's believed the plane had gone off the end of the runway. The president of the Duncan Flying Club says the injuries were not serious. Several people were rushed to hospital this morning after a multi-vehicle crash involving a bus. This chaotic scene on King George Boulevard at Colebrook Road overpass show at least 9 vehicles and a TransLink bus. BC Ambulance says paramedics were called around 8:30 this morning. 7 people were taken to hospital. No word on the extent of their injuries or what caused the crash. The city of Surrey says there were no reports of icy roads at the time of this collision. Environment Canada is advising drivers to be prepared for changing conditions during the morning commute tomorrow, as another round of winter weather is expected to hit the south coast this evening. Snow is expected to fall on Vancouver Island, the south coast, the lower mainland, and Howe Sound. We are expected to get anywhere from 2 to 10 centimeters here in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley. Nearly 3 weeks after floods devastated BC, the Trans Mountain Pipeline is back on. It's the latest development in a province that's now shifted into recovery mode, with many still struggling to get back on their feet. CTV's Ben Nesbitt has the details.
After nearly 3 weeks, the Trans Mountain Pipeline is back up and running. But for the majority of British Columbians, filling up a full tank will have to wait. The province says it will take time to resume operations, meaning the fuel rationing order is still in effect.
I would say non-essential people should limit their travel to just essential only.
While BC's gas supply is moving in the right direction, for fruit farmers, it's a different story. This is the scene in Sumas Prairie, where growers have had everything ripped away.
They spent their lives working on it. They've lost their houses. Now they're losing their livelihood.
The chair of the BC Blueberry Council and Abbotsford grower, Jason Smith, says his crops were damaged, but nowhere near to the extent of those over in Sumas Prairie, where a long road to recovery lies ahead.
We're talking long term. It's 2 years to get plants. You know, you're looking at another 8+ years to hit maturity, to get them back to where a lot of them were.
With so many struggling, Abbotsford's Gateway Community Church is stepping up, taking donations to supply food, shelter, and financial relief for flood victims.
We were kind of just organically trying to do whatever we could do to help, making meals, offering lodging. The donation center, everything that you see here didn't exist 15 days ago. We just kind of jumped in.
The province also announcing that financial aid will be expanded to flood victims across the province. Those affected have until March of next year to apply. Ben Nesbitt, CTV News, Abbotsford.
The province is advising owners of private drinking wells who have been affected by flooding that the water may be contaminated. This is due to potential overflow of liquid manure caused by heavy rain. Anyone who owns a private well is advised to take action. The local state of emergency has been extended for 1 week in Hope. Mayor Peter Robb requested the extension because there are nearly 200 homes still on evacuation alert along the Coquihalla River, including Brian McLean's.
We had floodwater in the garage and into the basement. Where I'm sitting right now in this office of mine, I mean, here, I'll show you, you can see behind me there, it's a dehumidifier going. They're all through the house right at the moment, all through the basement. There's a lot of damage, you know, to drywall, various things, and flooring. It all has to be repaired.
The district is advising people to stay away from the Coquihalla River as it still remains unsafe. Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth is scheduled to tour flood-ravaged Merritt tomorrow. Residents have slowly started to return home after the city lifted evacuation orders on Friday. On Saturday, the MLA for Skeena near Prince Rupert says he's shocked the NDP officials haven't been there yet.
It's much worse than you actually see on TV or on social media. The amount of soil that's being dug out of yards and crawl spaces and basements. The province got to get here. They got to be here on the ground in places like Abbotsford, Mission. You got to get out here. And then not only just infrastructure, help these people repair their lives.
With businesses still shut down, many residents have not been able to go back to work and have not received a paycheck in 3 weeks. We're learning more about the heroic efforts of BC healthcare workers who went to extraordinary lengths to provide medical attention during the height of the landslide disaster in the Fraser Valley and Canyon. As CTV's Benny Daflos reports, they took ATVs, helicopters, and rail to get to patients, and they're warning the road conditions have them on alert.
The scope of the mudslides in the Fraser Canyon was obvious, but what we couldn't see were power outages, zero cell service, scant supplies, and dropping temperatures. With motorists trapped in and around Hope, their tiny 10-bed hospital was inundated. One nurse went to work on a quad. This relief crew was helicoptered in, and Dr. Asim Grover had the most harrowing experience.
The fog was so dense that it was very hard for anyone to see anything, even with night vision goggles.
Boston Bar desperately needed a doctor for patients with cancer and requiring psychiatric medication.
Also, a 2-year-old baby that required a G-tube and colostomy supplies that were very pertinent.
The weather was so bad, only the military was able to get him there and on the way back. Even the Canadian Forces aircraft made an emergency landing on the banks of the swollen Fraser River.
We were getting actually closer and closer to power lines that they were having a hard time seeing. And we had to take a very quick little drop.
Quick thinking residents and CN Rail got them to safety and away from the rising river.
You never plan enough things to think about all the permutations and combinations of things.
Rural doctors still have to practice frontier medicine in many ways. And while virtual healthcare has helped, the flooding and slides have highlighted just how scant their medical resources are.
call Canadian problems, right? The geography is so vast and the resources are spread so thin outside of the lower mainland that it's impossible to get everything you need in every situation. And so there's always a conversation around what is needed and why and how can we be resourceful.
Fraser Canyon Hospital ended its code orange on Friday, now operating normally for the first time since the slides, but the staff are still on tenterhooks with the roads still being repaired.
And every day we have moments where weather changes and questions always arise. The roads being so vulnerable. Is there going to be another rock slide or a landslide? How am I going to get to and from work?
Penny Jafflos, CTV News.
Trains have resumed travel on CN's rail line on the Kamloops and Vancouver corridor. The rail lines have been closed due to significant washouts and mudslides from the mid-November flooding. The railroad operator actually restored limited service last week, but had to shut down again due to more mudslides and rain. Engineers and construction crews will continue to work on the Kamloops and Vancouver corridor as trains move through. Dairy farmers across BC have come together to boost the province's commercial milk production. Sumas Prairie is no longer hampering BC's commercial milk production, but farmers are still facing challenges. Some farms are still underwater, and there's no timeline as to when those will be up and running again. Cows have been relocated safely to other farms where they can still produce milk.
Well, it's just been amazing to see the community come together and the way that everyone has worked to support each other. 6,000 animals were moved out of the area, so that is a lot when you think about the size of a cow, but we're fortunate that they are fairly easy to look after in other settings.
She says it was very important that these animals found new homes to keep them safe and fed. Those animals are part of the reason the industry has been able to largely meet the demand for its products. The Sumas Prairie account for about 14% of all milk production in BC. And we're hearing of more technical glitches with the government's Arrive Can app.
I viewed this more as being told I'm under house arrest for the next 2 weeks. Non-compliant.
Why this woman says she was given no other option when technology failed her, and thousands of wreaths made by volunteers were laid at the National Military Cemetery in Ottawa today. Why this event was almost ruined.
CTV News, brought to you in part by your local IGA. Simple goodness. Shop from anywhere with IGA Click and Collect.